Hello, football family. Welcome into Huddle It Up Films. Today I have Mike B, Ravens fan 86, on the program. I appreciate him joining me. We're going to talk about a topic that he has some thoughts on, and I wouldn't bring him on here if I didn't think he had good thoughts, and that's regarding our defensive line. So, Michael, could you please just introduce yourself and tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, my name is Michael. I am been on Twitter for a long time, Ravens fan 86, probably since 2007, I think, or something like that. And been real active on Twitter, probably in really for the last year. A lot of optimism for this team this year. I think there's a really good chance for them this year.
It's definitely a really good roster, and then especially when you talk about the continuity within the coordinators, the coach, the quarterback. I mean, it's there's a lot of reason for optimism, and you don't have to be an optimistic person overall to see that. I mean, it's definitely a fun year and a fun time to be a Ravens fan. But getting into it now, the defensive line, there are four really main players on that line, and one of them doesn't fit in with the rest. You have Big Brandon Williams and Calais Campbell, Derek Wolf, and then of course the youngster, the only young guy of the group, Justin Matabike. So one of the things I wanted to get into and ask you is how concerned are you with the age, the wear and tear of that group, and how it could affect our season?
Well, I think we saw it last year with Calais Campbell with the calf injury. The issue with older players is, for the most part, like with him, he came back, but he was out he missed several games, and even when he did come back, it wasn't the same production. He wasn't the same player, and so the older the player gets, in many instances, it seems that the recovery time's a lot longer, and they may not completely heal until after the season. And I'm kind of picking on him a little bit because he's been very durable throughout his career. And of course, in the NFL, it's so brutal the position they play on the defensive line that it may. I just worry about the age of these guys and if they get injured, if they do get injured, their production goes away, and the guys that will replace them probably aren't going to give the same amount of productivity.
Yeah, it's hard, especially for a guy like Campbell who could do so much. He can line up pretty much anywhere on the line and be effective. He's really the only true DN that we have on this team when you look at what the Ravens like out of the prototypical length that they like from that position. I mean, Matabike is more of a three tech. He has the quickness where he could play end, but you really want to keep Matabike to where his strengths are. Wolf, Campbell, those are the guys with the length, the two gappers that you can have. But yeah, it was hard to replace Campbell. I mean, he was on fire. I think fans forget just how effective he was early in the season before the injury. I think he had 3 sacks in the Philadelphia game. And when you talk about his durability, Mike, he hadn't missed a game I think since 2014. I'll put those stats up on the screen, but he had played 16 games for quite a while, and he was playing 80% of the snaps. I'll look at it real quick. Um, if you look at his snap counts, I'll read it since 2015: 78%, 77%, 77%, 80%, and 78%. So you're looking at him in the high 70s to 80s every season since 2015. That's a lot of wear and tear, especially for a guy Campbell's size. And then, like you mentioned, the recovery time, the defensive line, especially, is a demanding position. Wouldn't you say, with the taking on double teams and trying to tackle running backs at odd angles? I mean, the pile ups to come.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, like, after probably 3 or 4 games, their arms, their hands, their fingers, they've got to ache from that, battle, that hand battle, hand position, hand punch, all those things matter at that position. And you're doing that, through the course of 50 or 60 snaps or whatever the average is. I don't know what 80% of, I think there's like 60 or 70 snaps on average in a game for a defensive lineman like Campbell, but he can't. They need to have him on a snap count, a strict snap count, and to keep him, number one, fresh, and number two, more durable.
Yeah, fresh Campbell, especially during the playoff run in December and January, would be invaluable for this team because, I'll repeat myself again. He was really, really dominant those first 6 or 7 games, whatever it was, until he pulled his calf in Indianapolis, which was just a sad turn of events. Well, what about the pass rush? That's another example of where, what do you think about our interior pass rush as it stands?
Think you and I kind of batted this around on Twitter for a little bit. That I think I've come around to your maybe your approach is that if the inside linemen, if they can put pressure on a quarterback, it's gonna really wrap. Like thought back to, and I think I mentioned this to you with Tom Brady when back in 2012, 2013, when Nada was in his heyday. you know, Brady was not the same player. He was not effective as a quarterback against the Ravens defense, and a lot of that had to do with pressure still in his drill. And I think that you get that with Campbell. I'm not sure you may get that with Matabuke, and I think to your point, even Derek has some talent there to get pressure up the middle. And I think I don't think it's going to getting batted around about who's should we go after an edge or maybe an interior lineman. And my take is that I would much rather at this point go after an interior line for some juice inside to get pressure in a quarterback drill than try to outside. And we don't have the talent outside at this point anyway. I mean, we could go after Houston, but I just feel like if the money to me is better spent if we had someone on the inside that's a good pass rusher.
Yes, and I wouldn't mind a Justin Houston addition. I don't want to make it sound like I'm against that. If we can upgrade our talent there, that would be great. He's a veteran. He still has good hands. I have a video, two videos actually on here. If anybody wants to reference it, it's Justin Houston snaps versus the Steelers, and I believe the other game was against the Jaguars. But to my eye, he lost a lot of juice from the Justin Houston I remember. But my want for another interior defensive lineman comes down to the fact that quarterbacks are getting the ball out faster and faster. The best way to disrupt, you mentioned Tom Brady, that was a rhythm offense back then, Michael. Like it was 1, 2, 3, balls out, 1, 2, balls out, 1, 2, 3, balls out. And that's the way the NFL has evolved more and more these today. So having a defensive lineman who can create pressure up the middle, to me, is more valuable than a speed rusher, which takes a little bit of time to get around an offensive tackle. By that time, a lot of times we saw what in Dockway last year, the ball's out before he gets a chance to make an impact. So yes, the one name that stuck out to me was Jarrell Casey. That's a guy who is consistently, if you look at his stats, 5 to 7 sacks every season, which is a lot. That's pretty much equivalent to a 10 sack season on the outside. So I'm not sure what's going on individually with the players, but there are a couple of inside guys. Geno Atkins is another one who are available that we could potentially add for the defensive tackle. But getting away from the pass rush a second, how about our run defense? It's not something that I'm completely happy with how it's happened the last 2 years. I think 2 years ago we gave up 4.4 a rush, and last year we gave up 4.6 yards per rush. And it's very Ravens, unlike Ravens. Of course, they want to attack us there because our secondary is really good. But you can see the difference when Brandon Williams is in the lineup and when he's out. And can you just talk about the importance of Brandon Williams and the run defense on this team?
Well, the first thing is, I was hoping that we would pick somebody up in the draft this past year, but it sounded like after the first two tackles were drafted, there really wasn't. Of course, the Ravens scouts are really good, but in their mind, there really wasn't anyone draftable that would be, a supplement who's on our line right now. And so that's concerning because for two reasons. One is, as we mentioned, the players are getting older, but also the contract, the length of their contracts also comes into play with the cap. And, you draft these guys, on the cheap, and then, coach them up and get them in the games, and that you can manage your cap better that way. But I think the thing that, to your point about Brandon Williams, that is concerning is, even with him in, their run defense wasn't as good. But without him in, again, Ellis is okay, Washington's okay, but they're not Brandon Williams. And when you don't have that nose tackle that can stand up the line of scrimmage, like the line of scrimmage rarely moves backwards when he's in the game. That makes a huge difference when they're trying to run the ball either up the middle or off to on one, off of one left tackle or the other, or between the tackles. When he's taken up, the middle of the field, the middle of where the snap's coming from, and it's not moving, it gives the linebackers time to get to him, and they can run free, and we need that especially with um, our young linebackers. They're quick, they're fat. Queen, that's what I'm thinking of. They're
Hmm.
quick, they're fast, but they need to be clean to make the tackle, and that's
Very,
what Williams gives you.
very much so. I mean, I even remember Ray Lewis back in the day. I'm sure you do too, Michael, talking about it. Get me somebody up there, get me somebody to take the blockers off of me, some pressure off of me, give me some space to run around and make plays. And of course, they responded by drafting Haloti Ngata, which worked out pretty well for everybody involved. But yeah, Brandon Williams. I mean, I see a lot out there about his salary and whether it's worth it to pay a defensive tackle, a nose guard, basically that kind of money. But man, the numbers don't lie when he's in the lineup and when he's out of the lineup. And to add to your point too, Michael, you need to double team Brandon Williams as well. If you play him one on one, it's not just a matter of pushing him backwards. He will push you backwards into the backfield and blow up a running play. So you better assign either one very good player to him or two players to him, or else he's going to be in your backfield even if he's not getting sacks. He's blowing plays up. I think Chris Sims used to say or says there should be a category for effing the play up, and that's what Brandon Williams does a heck of a lot of. He's in there messing the plays up constantly. But Michael, what's your overall assessment? Can you give me some final thoughts?
Absolutely.
Anything that you have on the defensive line?
Well, I think if they stay healthy, I kind of went back and forth on Twitter with some guys about this. That I said that they might drop out of the top 10 on defense because of those three and their age. I think if they stay healthy and Wolf, Williams, and Campbell can stay healthy, I agree they'll be a top 10, maybe even a top 5 defense. But if one of those guys goes down again, like happened last year with Campbell, or I think Williams even had a spell where he was out. Their defense is going to suffer, and maybe it's not as important because I think we're going to be so multiple and dynamic on offense that maybe it won't matter as much. But you still have to stop the run, and the basics of the NFL. You got to be able to stop the run, and you got to be able to get pressure on quarterbacks, so they're going to eat you alive. And so, if they stay healthy, we'll be okay. I do anticipate a breakout year for Matabuke. I think he could wind up being all pro. When the veterans talk about him, very high praise, and that carries weight because they play with him, so their words are weighted more than just a coach or somebody saying how good he is. So there's a chance, but again, it comes down to being healthy and preserving these guys as much as possible. With these guys don't like snap counts because they're competitors and they want to be in the game, but they have to be on a snap count, and a strict snap count in my mind.
Yeah, keeping them fresh for the playoffs. And like you said, Michael, a lot of times it won't matter, but there will be that one game where, maybe Lamar throws an interception or the back fumbles or things aren't going our way, the weather's bad. There could be a million things. I mean, we've seen everything happen to us that could happen to us last year. Having those big guys, the Monstars and Matabike up front, is just going to be huge to us. But I thank you very much for joining me. I think people will love getting a chance to see you and hear your voice after interacting with you. So football is family. And Michael, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Jason.